guys, welcome to Baking and Books. My name is Lexi and I'm an amateur baker who loves to read. So each week I post videos of myself attempting to bake something new while also talking about a book that I have recently read or just really love. This week I'm going to be attempting to bake Stollen, I think is how it's pronounced. It's a traditional German bread with like fruit and things like that. That's how Google told me to pronounce it, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You can blame Google. And we're going to be talking about the fourth book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series, A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. This was a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought it was going to be just kind of like another adventure story, but I really got heated along the way in certain parts and felt like I had a lot to talk about, so I think this should be really interesting to dive in with you guys on this one. I'm a little nervous about this bread because it has a lot of ingredients and a lot of stuff that I've never used before. I also couldn't find some of the exact ingredients, so we're kind of winging it a little bit, but I'm hoping that these are just the things that this particular recipe wanted me to use and that I can kind of make it my own a little bit. So let's get started. Okay, so essentially where we left off is that Jacob's family was being a lot. And Miss Peregrine and the other children, like, come and save him, essentially, from having to go to, like, a psych ward, because his family's being a lot. But now, the problem is that all the kids and Miss Peregrine are at the house, and the parents and his uncles are, like, trapped in the garage, and what are they going to do with them? So, Jacob is basically trying to decide, is he going to tell his parents? Or is he going to try to, like, get away with this somehow? And basically, like, I don't know how he would get away with it, but basically, like, get away with it somehow. So that's basically what he's trying to decide. Can he trust telling his parents and, you know, all of this? And of course, there's tons of rules to that, but Miss Peregrine's like, listen, if you want to tell your parents and you want to take that risk, you know, we can figure it out. But there's a lot more that he has to learn, not only about himself and his powers, but really more about his history. I feel like the last book was a lot of him learning about his peculiar abilities and like how to best use them. And I feel like this book is a lot about his grandfather and like his grandfather's history. I'm trying to cut these up because I really was supposed to use other dried fruits and they didn't exist at the store, so this is what we're using, and I don't want them to be chunks too big. I'm a little worried that they will be, but we're trying our best to make it work here. So basically, Jacob ends up going on this adventure with some of his friends across the country to try to rescue a uncontacted peculiar. So basically, like, they probably are starting to realize that they're peculiar based on all the stuff that's going on around them and in their life, but they haven't been contacted by an inbred, and like they don't have any sort of grasp on peculiarities. So Jacob and his friends are going to go and try to help this person. So it is an adventure story similar to the last one, and similarly in the sense that it's like kind of a rescue mission, but it's a little more like Jacob and his friends are growing up and there's a lot of different things about them that they're trying to figure out, and so it's not just all easy peasy. Like, there's a lot that they have to go through and a lot they have to figure out. So that is pretty much the synopsis. So if you haven't read this book yet and you don't want things spoiled for you, then go ahead and skip forward until it says no more spoilers. And you can see how our Stollen bread turned out, which is touch and go, I'm not going to lie to you. But I promised you guys that I would start trying new things besides cakes and cupcakes, and that I would try to start doing things that were a little bit more challenging. And this has a lot of ingredients, and some very difficult ingredients, some ingredients I haven't used before, so I figured this pretty much fits the bill. So if you want to see how this thing turns out, then go ahead and skip forward until it says no more spoilers. But if you don't care, you've already read this book, and you're not worried about spoilers, then stay with me, and we're going to get in deeper into the book. This recipe involves rum, so I can't imagine that you can really go wrong with a recipe that involves alcohol, you know? The first thing that really sort of just made me laugh was when they were talking about, you know, being normal and getting to see the sights, as it were. And they were talking about how Muncie, Indiana is like the most normal town in all of America, and that like peculiars go there on vacation because it's so normal. I love that. I, for reference, went to school in Muncie, Indiana, and lived there for a year afterwards working a job. So that really made me chuckle because it is a very ordinary town, I'm not gonna lie. So that was just something small that I personally got a kick out of. I'm sure not everybody would, but I appreciated the shout out to a very normal town. It's a fine place. Like, I'm not coming from Muncie, Indiana, but like, I don't know that I would live there. Well, longer than the obvious time that I already did. The first thing though that really got to me was like, I just was very disappointed in Jacob's dad. Like, I just felt like, I understand he's going through a lot of hurt from the past, and, there were a lot of, like, unanswered questions from his father, and I get that. And, like, I'm sure there's a part of him, too, that feels lied and cheated, and, maybe, like, he feels like he should have had powers, too, I mean, maybe he feels like, well, if Dad got powers, why didn't I? So maybe he just feels, like, very hurt and, saddened by that, and I can totally get that, and you're learning a lot about your son and your father after your father has already passed away. So there's really no chance of fixing things. But, I just feel like he has this opportunity to not only get to know his son better, but to potentially get to know his father better as well by hearing Jacob's story and by really listening and being a part of all of that and really hearing him out. And I feel like with the mom, it's pretty obvious that she wasn't going to. Like, I feel like the mom is not really that much of a surprise. But with Jacob's dad, I feel like, he obviously wants to be a good father, and he wants to be a good father to Jacob. And so what frustrates me is that he just doesn't seem to want to really put in the effort when things get kind of weird and more difficult than normal. And that's the part that's weird to me, is like, you didn't have a good relationship with your father. Wouldn't you want a better relationship with your son? Like, wouldn't you want to hear him out? Wouldn't you want to try to be the best father that you could be for him? Because you didn't have that relationship with your father. I just think if that were the case, he would just want to try so much harder, and he just clearly doesn't. And that just makes me really sad, like, not only for Jacob, but it makes me very disappointed for his dad, because I just kind of figured his dad was better than that. And as it turns out, he's really not. I'm trying so hard to keep track of what I'm saying because I'm having to stop so frequently to, like, get more ingredients and think about what I am doing. Like, I'm just not used to so many ingredients, and it's sort of stressing me out. But I can do it. I can't always talk while I'm doing it. I gotta focus. But the thing about Jacob is that while I do feel bad for him, sometimes I do have to roll my eyes. He's a very typical teenager. He very much thinks that he's grown up because of everything that they went through. And I will definitely give him that, like, they've been through more than a lot of other peculiars. And that he did save the day. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's all grown up and that he can just make his own choices all the time. And he doesn't always make the best choices, let's be honest. But, I know he's trying. And I know he's, like, trying to be the best he can be. And he really wants to follow in his grandfather's footsteps, and I get that and I respect that. But it's just very typical teenager of him to suddenly just be like, well, I know what's best for me, and when I'm not being sulky and moody like a typical teenager, I'm gonna lash out at the people that I love that are trying to help me and take care of me. So, I agree that Jacob has done more, and so have the other peculiar children, although they're not really children. But, still, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Personally, I think that hollows should always be pets. I think they're adorable, and I'll hear no other words about it. I love H's hollow, and I think it's adorable, and I absolutely love it. I'm sure it's actually terrifying, because, they're described as, like, really terrifying creatures. So I'm sure in reality, it's kind of a weird thing to get used to, but I love the idea of it. Cardamom is, strong smelling. I will say, Emma has yet to annoy me in this book so far. You don't want to speak too soon, but usually by this point, I'm pretty much over her. But she's kind of kept to herself, just kind of been a little more, like, helpful to Jacob wherever she can be, and that's a change of pace for her, and I like it. Okay. got all my dry ingredients here, so now I can add the wet ingredients soon. Start putting the dough together. You know, the thing that I found really interesting when they're talking towards the beginning of the book about, you know, why peculiars went into hiding and all the things that they've had to go through over the years. It's just, it's a comment on the things that people go through all the time. And the thing is that hate and prejudice always starts with fear and ignorance. And I know we use the term ignorance, I feel like, in a really degrading way oftentimes. But I think it's more just that ignorance just simply means you just don't know. You've never been exposed to something, or you've just never taken the time to learn about something. Sometimes that's your fault because you're not taking the time. Sometimes it's somebody else's fault because you're put in a situation by your parents or your family or whatever. But that fear of the unknown and the ignorance of the unknown is what breeds hate and prejudice. Because when you're afraid of something, I mean, that's just what happens. And it's very sad to me. And I know that I'm not trying not to break my bowl here while talking about a difficult subject, but I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I was raised with a lot of privilege, and I try really hard to educate myself on other people's histories and cultures, and I try to listen when people talk. I mean, people who are different than me, they've had different life experiences. I just try to listen when they talk. I feel like that's one of the easiest things you can do, is really listen. Not just listen to tell your own story or to argue with them, but to really, really listen. And I feel like we as a human population, human race, we as humans, have a really difficult time with that. I know sometimes, people say, well, I'm just trying to connect. And I interrupt you and I tell my own stories because I'm trying to connect. And that's fine, sometimes. But sometimes you really have to just listen. And obviously, in this sense, we're talking about something that, as far as I know, doesn't exist. Peculiar people. Well, there are peculiar people out there, but not in this sense. But we talk about racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia. All these things that we encounter all the time. They come from a fear of the unknown, or a fear of things changing in a direction where maybe you're not the spotlight anymore, or maybe your life is a little bit harder because you've got to change the rules and you've got to accommodate different people. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a little bit of change is good sometimes, but people don't see it that way. People see it as, this is going to change my whole life for the worse and I don't want to be a part of it. Which isn't really fair, because you're not really giving it a chance. And so, as scary as it is, I highly recommend really learning and really listening before judging. Alright, I think this dough is just about ready to sit. We're going to cover it with our plastic wrap, and that way it can sit for about an hour and it can rise. Okay, our first round of rising is done, so let's move on. The only thing I will say, I wouldn't say that Emma has, annoyed me this book yet, but I will just say that I think her and, in my opinion, her and Jacob's relationship is old. Either be together or don't. I understand that, they're going through a lot, and, Emma's going through a lot, and, that sucks, and I get that that's what makes the relationship drama so interesting. But, at the same time, it's just kind of it's the will they or won't they thing. And maybe it's because I dislike Emma, but for me, I just feel like I don't want the will they won't they thing. This is not Ross and Rachel. I don't care enough about their relationship to continue with the back and forth. And I think that both of them have points, and both of them are wrong in certain instances. I think that Jacob is right in the fact that he's trying really hard to give her a chance to come to terms with everything about his grandfather and, the past that they didn't have, even though, that's the past that she hoped for so long. And I feel like he is doing a good job with that. But at the same time, she did date his grandfather first, and maybe this is just not the right call. Whereas for Emma, it's sort of I can understand why she's struggling to move on when she finally gets to see all of Abe's life that he lived, but she starts getting jealous over girls of his past, and like, you know, he had a wife, he had kids. I mean, he moved on, and I feel like you should have long since come to, I don't know, I feel like you should have long since been okay with that. I do think, I think I put a little bit too much fruit in this. I don't know, it just seems very, like there's a little bit too much going on. So I don't know what we're gonna do about that, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. My thing with Jacob's relationship with H is that it kind of annoys me that H didn't think about this mission being dangerous until they were already, like, pretty much done with it. Like, H is like, well, it's too dangerous now, so just, like, abort the mission. After they've already traveled across the country, gone to different time zones, different loops, things like that. And now you're like, oh, this is too dangerous for you. He definitely should have thought that through a little bit before he just like backtracked. Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of excess fruit as we go and see if that helps. An oval, okay. It's an oddly specific request that I'm not sure I can do, but we're gonna try. You know, the thing that started to really get me about the book is when they get back, you know, and everybody's mad at them, you know, Miss Peregrine saves them from the thing, and she's super mad at them and all of that. And my thing is, there aren't children. You know, Jacob is. Like, Jacob's a child. He's only 16. But the other peculiars are not children. I mean, they're, like, technically in their 80s or potentially more. And to me, it's like, I understand where you're coming from, that they don't have a lot of experience in the world. I totally get that. But that's not really their fault. I mean, that's just the way that this society has chosen to operate. So it only wants them in 1 inch thickness? Oh, God. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted by these instructions. Because, like, I don't know if I can do that. But, you know, here you have all these adults who are frustrated with them for going out into the world and trying to do things on their own. But the truth of it is that they are not little kids anymore. And they did just go through this, like, whole huge battle, you know, in Devil's Acre a few months back or whatever. And they want to be treated like adults. And quite frankly, like, I don't really blame them. I mean, I think that's very teenagery in general, is that, like, you know, you want to be able to be treated like an adult, especially when you've proven yourself to be more like an adult. I hope this is right, because I am very confused. I understand that, like, Jacob's the ringleader and he made some mistakes, but, like, what I get frustrated with is that Miss Peregrine and the other Miss Peregrine and the others are, you know, treating these other peculiars like they're absolute babies. And the thing is, like, they're not children. They've been around for a long time. They've been living life, and they just went through this really horrific event in Devil's Acre not that long ago, proving that they are capable of so much more, and you're just not giving them a chance, in my opinion, to be capable of so much more. Alright, well, this makes sense to me, so now we're going to break out the marzipan, which I've never worked with before, so that should be interesting. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. But yeah, I mean, that just annoys me. Like, I fully agree, and I probably said this in other books, but I fully agree that, you know, children should be allowed to be children, and that sometimes, like, adults have to make... Okay, honestly, I don't remember where I just was. My mom called and I lost my train of thought. It's not her fault. I love talking to my mom, but I did, in fact, lose my train of thought. So, anyway, they're not children, you know? I mean, Jacob is, and Jacob did some stupid stuff, but, you know, I'll circle back to that momentarily, I guess. I'm glad I got 2 of these, because it said you only needed 8 ounces, but, I mean, my rolls are so long. I could be totally doing this wrong. And I just want us all to recognize that. My other thing is that, you know, I think the other peculiar children are sort of hard on Jacob. I feel like, you know, they agreed to go on this trip just like he did. I mean, they didn't have to go. They were given a choice, and they chose to go. They knew what it would mean. I mean, they knew that Miss Peregrine would be mad, and they knew that, like, probably the other Imbrins would be mad, and that the other kids would have to, like, lie or whatever and hold down the fort. I mean, they knew all of that before going into it, and I feel like they just look at Jacob like, well, this is all your fault. And I feel like it's very unfair to Jacob, because I don't think he has to be Abe to succeed. You know what I mean? Like, I think that he can be his own person, and he can be his own authentic Jacob self, and he doesn't have to be his grandfather to be successful. And I feel like for some reason, well, I mean, not for some reason, like I understand why they do it, but everybody holds Abe to this like pedestal. And my issue with that is that, you know, they haven't seen him for decades. I mean, literally years and years and years. They haven't seen him. They don't know what he's up to. They didn't know anything about him. He pretty much stopped writing and, you know, stopped communicating with them. And so they really don't even know who he is. And yet they have a chance to know who Jacob is, and they're treating him like if he's not Abe, he's not doing it correctly. Okay, here's the problem with how they told me to do this. These are not going to fit on a baking sheet. Like, look at that. These are not going to fit. Okay, I'm making the decision to cut these in half to put them on the baking sheet. It could be the wrong decision, but that's what we're doing. Okay, so they went in, they came out. They're doing okay. The marzipan is definitely showing on these two a lot. These two are okay. They had a little bit leak out here on the sides, but other than that, they're okay. Okay, so now we have to stab them in a couple of places and pour in butter, which seems like an excellent idea. So we're going to do that real quick. The last thing that I will say is that, you know, I do think that Jacob can be childish, and I think that he can be a little selfish about his actions. But I do think that the one point he makes that I very much agree with is that the inbrins, whatever, keep a lot of secrets. Like, they don't want people to know really any of their business. And I understand, like, there's a sense where you, as, like, let's say a parent, you know, you keep certain things from your child because you feel like that's better. You know, you feel like that's how it should be, that they're too young to know certain things. And I think to an extent that that is true to an extent. I do. Because I think that there are certain things that kids don't always need to know, you know? I mean, I think that there are things that teenagers don't need to know, you know, like financial struggles or things like that. And I think there are rules. I think there are exceptions to every rule. I mean, you know, it just depends what their relationship is like with you and, you know, how everything goes. And so, like, I understand keeping things from your children or trying to handle things yourself. But I also think that, you know, there's a lot of information here that this isn't working. There's a lot of information here that had the Imbrins hold the kids sooner rather than later, they probably wouldn't have gone on this mission. Or they would have, you know, thought some stuff through before they did it. And instead that wasn't the case because the Imrins lied to them. Or maybe not necessarily lied, but they definitely kept stuff from them. So my biggest thing is just that they were lied to about so much and not told about so much that, you know, I do think Jacob has a point. Maybe if they hadn't kept those secrets and they hadn't tried so hard to protect the kids from whatever, maybe this whole thing wouldn't have happened. Okay, if you left because of spoilers, go ahead and come back and join us. We had a lot of our Stollen bread, more than I thought. Basically, I don't know if I just didn't roll it up correctly or whatever, but it was too long for just 2 things, so now there are 4. I don't know, let's cut it open and see what happened. This one looks the best, so I think I'm gonna cut into this one because I feel like, well, I don't know, the end of this one looks pretty good. Okay, let's try this one. It's hard to know because I've never had this before. I'm sure I have some sort of German roots, I'm pretty sure I do, but not in this, not proud enough German roots to know what this is supposed to be like. It's a little messy because of the powdered sugar, but I'll try to show you up close. It's going to have a hard time focusing, but there it is. You can see the different dried fruits I put in and stuff. Now, I didn't use the dried fruits that were recommended. We just couldn't find them, and this was the path I was on today, so we'll see. It's strange. I don't really know how else to describe it, because the fruit is kind of like more of sour fruit, but because of the powdered sugar and all of the cinnamon and stuff that went in, the bread is sweet. So it's just like sweet and sour, and I don't know if I like it or not. Actually, I think I do like it. It's kind of weird, but maybe a good weird. I haven't gotten to the paste yet, the almond paste, the marzipan. So I guess maybe I should bite out of that side and see what that does for it. Wow, very almondy. I think I'm supposed to decorate this with almonds, because it made me get almonds and I haven't used them yet. I just realized that. I don't know. I don't think I did it right, but I also would say that it's not awful. I'm going to call this a success for now, until somebody comes in my comments and tells me about how I did it wrong, or all my friends decide that they hate it. But for now, I'm going to call it a success. And, I mean, I like it. I definitely would maybe do some different things next time, maybe different choices of fruits. I'm not sure that the combination that I picked was, like, the best combination, but it does fine. If you have any other recipes you want me to try, go ahead and send those my way. It is the Christmas season, so I would love to try some new things, but I also am really tempted to try some very Christmassy things. Although I am going to try to stay away from cakes and cupcakes, since that's sort of that's become a little bit more routine. And I'm trying to try new things. Exhibit A. I would highly recommend this book. If you haven't gotten into this series yet, give it a try. It's a really wild adventure. It's one of those things that seems like it could end in the first book, but then they just like take you right at the end and they're like, nope, this is going to be a whole series. I'm really looking forward to getting into the 5th book. I don't know if the 5th is the final one or not. It's just the most recent that has come out. I'm not really sure what Ransom Riggs' game plan is, so I guess we'll see when we get there. But I really enjoy this book, and I really enjoy this series, and I would highly recommend it. Feel free to throw some book suggestions my way. I did just get a huge order in because I was really low on books and I needed to order. So I've got a lot of stuff that I'm really excited about. We're going to be getting into a new series really soon that I know you guys are going to be pumped about. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I always will take new book recommendations because, I mean, I'm always willing to hear what people want me to read. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I post what I'm currently reading if you want to try to keep up. And feel free to follow me on all social media. If you had a good time today, please like and subscribe. I try to be here for you every week, and it is fun, but a little bit of a hot mess, usually, because I don't always know what I'm doing, and sometimes I just make it up as I go. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you to those of you that watch every week. You are the absolute best, and I will see you guys next time.